Hello, I'm Marcy Mallette, and I'm the technical winemaking rep for Laffort in the Central Coast of California. Laffort is the oldest enological supply company in the world. And what I want to talk to you guys today is building mouthfeel in wine. So really, because a lot of wine isn't just the aromatics, but it's the way that it feels in your mouth when you taste it. So you can start with this from the very beginning in fermentation. So there's a few different ways to start enhancing the mouthfeel of wine from the get-go. Fermentation tannins, enzymes, your yeast selection, and yeast products. So really, if you start with fermentation tannins, VR Supra is the name of our sacrificial tannin. It's that when grapes come in, they might have some oxidative issues going on. They might have some botrytis, things that are going to negatively impact the wine. So if you don't put in a sacrificial enzyme to grapes that are compromised immediately, what's going to happen is these oxidative problems are going to join with the tannins from the skins of your grapes as they're extracted during the fermentation process and drop them out. So by adding a sacrificial tannin up front in the juice stage, the sacrificial tannin that you add is going to bind with all these negative proteins and oxidative enzymes and fall out. Then throughout your fermentation, the tannins that you're working so hard to extract and to build mouthfeel, those are still going to be there because you've bound up the problems in the beginning. Another way of helping build mouthfeel in the beginning is to add an enzyme or a tannin like VR Color, which is different from VR Supra, where VR Supra is a sacrificial tannin. VR Color actually helps bind the tannins that you've now extracted from the skins of the grapes and the anthocyanins with the aldehydes that are formed during fermentation. So it's called the aldehyde bridge. So an aldehyde binds with VR Color and the tannins that you're extracting from the grapes, binds that with the anthocyanins that you're extracting from the grapes, and forms a very stable compound that won't fall out later. And these things, when used in conjunction with a maceration enzyme like HE Grand Cru, HE Grand Cru. It's an enzyme, and so it's a maceration enzyme. So if you add a maceration enzyme to the grapes, it starts to break them down and pull these tannins and anthocyanins out of the grapes faster. And our research shows that when you use this combination of tannins and enzymes, you lose 40% less color over a 12-month period by the time that gets to bottle. And it also protects your wine from oxidation because you're adding more tannins, and tannins are antioxidants. So Galalacul there is a white tannin that you can add if you see botrytis fruit, like white fruit come in. But the Galalacul will act as a sacrificial tannin for your white grapes as well.
How do you know you need to do this?
Oh, by looking at your fruit. You can see if you have botrytis. Actually, even if you don't have compromised fruit, all of this is still going to do nothing but enhance your wine and bring more structure and more color to the wine than it would just without it. And I know a lot of people are native winemakers, and if that's your style, absolutely. But I think it's also important to know that these tools are available to you. Well, it's more one of those things where you get to know your fruit, and if you see your fruit is compromised, you need to know what's available for you to be able to take action.
What do you mean by compromised?
Botrytis, like sunburned fruit, like just has such low tannin, it just loses so much throughout the and a lot of you, I don't know if most of you growing your own grapes, or are you buying it from other places, or both? But yeah, so sometimes you don't have the control over when you're going to pick, if you're buying your fruit, if the fruit is compromised. So just learning these things about your fruit is important, and knowing what tools are available to you up front is pretty important. And also, it could be something so simple as choosing a yeast strain. Yeast strains like FX10 are just shown through research to produce a lot more of the HSP12 peptide as well as polysaccharides in the yeast cell walls. So through the fermentation then, these are just byproducts of fermentation that get released into the wine. And so there's just more mouthfeel created. And in white wines like VL2 and VL3 are for white wine strains. And like if you taste like VL3 next to an X5 fermentation, it'll almost taste like the X5 had an acid addition, and the VL3 is just so voluptuous and round in your mouth. Like just a yeast alone can do that for a wine. So it's pretty interesting. And so yeast selection is important, not just using anything off the shelf, but kind of making a conscious decision of where you want your wine to go. You can do that just through yeast selection alone.
You know, we make our own wine, we're tasting. How do we know what we need? You know, we don't know.
Well, you just start mapping it out. You start laying out a plan, and it's what people that go into production actually do is start figuring out, like, what do I want out of this wine, these grapes? The land is capable of giving me this, but what do I want to make the wine into?
So is that when you taste it that you know?
Oh, well, through experience of if you've made wine from that vineyard before and you're thinking, well, you know, it really lacked like that mid-palate. Like, how do I drive, just in my fermentation, how do I drive those characteristics to get more of that mouthfeel? And so if you have grapes that come in and they're super high alcohol, there's things to do later on down the road we'll talk about in a minute that can help that.
Thanks, Marcy.
Yeah, and then other products like yeast-derived products that are just broken down yeast cell walls with certain peptides that are extracted that can add so much mouthfeel to a wine. Like if you have a Chardonnay that maybe could use some more mouthfeel, fermenting with a product called enolese can really enhance the wine. So what enolese basically is broken down lees that will put a peptide into the wine. So during surly aging, when you age your wines in barrel, why are you doing this? It's to get more mouthfeel in your wine. As those lees in the bottom of the barrel break down, they release manoproteins, peptides, polysaccharides, and that's what actually gives you your mouthfeel. And so sometimes you don't get that from your fermentation or from your lees aging, but there's agents out there that are basically like a lees replacement, and that would be enolese. And so if maybe sometimes your lees go reductive and you have to rack off your lees and you no longer have lees, but you still want that surly aging, you can put it on enolese and it's replacing your lees. So, but really what we should concentrate on today is building your mouthfeel through post-fermentation tools like aging tannins and finishing tannins, gum arabics, yeast-derived products like enolese, like I just mentioned, and an enzyme called extralyse, as well as alternative oaks, which we're not going to really talk about alternative oaks today because that's an entire hour-long subject in itself. And Laffort has a patent on a process called IDP, which is instant dissolving process. And all of our tannins that you can put into your wine, they are instantly dissolving. So you can just sprinkle it on the top of the wine and mix it in, and it's going to go in. It doesn't take a lot of mixing it with water and constant circulation to try to get it in. You can just instantly just put it in the wine and it dissolves. So if we just start with ways of post-fermentation to get more out of the body of your wine, there's aging tannins. So these would go in, like when you taste your wine post-fermentation, post-ML, and it's in barrel, you can kind of tell maybe it needs a little bit more structure and body. This is the time to add these, VR Grape and Tancourt Grand Cru. VR Grape is all grape derived, where Tancourt Grand Cru is a tannin that's derived from the grape skins and from oak tannins. So it just depends. All of these, of course, you would want to do trials on the bench and figure it out which way you want to go. Of course, when a tannin is only derived from grape, it's a lot more expensive, so that's another thing to take into consideration. But you want to add them at least 2 months before bottling, but in my opinion, you should add them 6 months before bottling. You really want to leave them in there and have time to incorporate into the wine and kind of become one and meld with it. But the Quare tannin line, this is a fun line. I love talking about Quare tannins. They're oak tannins that you can add these during the aging process, or you can add them up to 2 weeks before you bottle. So say after your wine has been in barrel for however you leave it in, a year or 18 months, and you just didn't quite get what you thought you were going to get from your oak barrels, and it needs a little bit more. We have this entire line of Quare tannins, which are instantly dissolving as well, and they really build the aromatic profile as well as help build the mouthfeel of the wine. And also they're an antioxidant, which will protect the wine for the upcoming bottling process, which you know is going to get exposed to some wine or to some oxygen. Oak. Yeah, they're all from oak tannins. Yeah, so it would be, I'll go into that here in a second here. So maybe. So other benefits of Quare tannins, they definitely mask, like if you get green fruit or fruit come in, then you have the vegetal aromas. It'll definitely help mask that, as it enhances the barrel and alternative oak program that you've put the wine under, as well as it increases the perception of price and quality. And improves the ageability because it's an antioxidant, as well as reduces astringency in your wine as well.
Question?
Yes?
Is there several preparations, or is it all?
Yeah, so I'm going to go in that right now. So the Quare tannin line, we have 5 different tannins in this line, and the cards that are on your chairs, starting with the one that's red on the front. These are pretty informative to have because they explain the entire line. So we're going to start with Quare tannin, then there's Quare sweet, there's Quare chalk, there's plus and intense. And as you go down down those cards, the aromatic intensity increases. So the impact that it actually has on your wine will increase. But if you go up the chart, the more structure that you will get from those tannins. So the first one is Quare tannin. It's basically, it is extracted from a very light toasted French oak barrel. So it's the tannins that come from a very lightly toasted French oak barrel. So it's going to have more structural impact. It's going to have more antioxidant impact on the wine, and just it can help reduce reductive characters. It's a wonderful tannin. And this one, like if you ever think during your aging process that you have some oxidation going on, this would be another aging tannin that you could, besides the VR Grape or the Tancourt Grand Cru, that you could incorporate into the wine to help with those oxidative problems. Yeah.
How do you know how much to put in?
So on that card, we're going to talk about that too in a little bit, but on the side, you'll see the far right-hand side, there's a recommended dosage range. So you set up bench trials and you try it, like anywhere from Quare tannin would be 10 to 75 parts per million. And so we'll talk about how to do that as well in a little bit. The Quare tannin sweet, that one is a French oak toasted barrel, that like medium toast. So that's where you're going to start getting your vanilla notes. If that's something that you're looking to finish your wine with, if you And once again, all of these have to be trialed. You can't just randomly add them. And gives the perception of sweetness. And the tannin chalk, that would be like your medium plus toasted French oak barrel. Now you're going to start getting a little bit darker fruit characteristics coming out and some chocolate characteristics. And we do have one in the tannin line that's American oak, and that's it's a medium toast from American oak barrel. Imagine that. So it definitely lifts the fruit, but it adds a lot of spice to your blend as well. And the last one is tannin intense, and that is basically a heavy toasted French oak barrel. So think roasted coffee, roasted nuts, spices, everything you would think that you were going to get from a heavy toasted barrel, maybe caramel toasted notes as well. So first, I'd say dial in your aromatics with the tannins, and then look at your mid-palate volume builders. And so a lot of times with underripe fruit, maybe you just don't have the volume and the mid-palate that you need. And so that's when we get into products that'll help build the mid-palate. Like Autoleaf, this is a fabulous product. We have a patent on this, and it's purified HSP12 peptide. So as I talked about earlier, during surly aging, through research, we've shown that one of the compounds that is released from the yeast cell wall during aging that makes wine have that perception of sweetness and that volume in the mouthfeel is this HSP12 peptide. So we've isolated that. We've isolated yeast strains that just naturally have a lot more HSP12 peptide in it. And we've managed to isolate that. So earlier when I talked about enolese that can be added during the aging process as well as during the fermentation, enolese has the yeast cell wall with it and the HSP12 peptide. So that's something that needs to be settled out, and it has a fining effect also, so it can shave off some of those bitter phenolics at the end of your wine. Autoleaf is only the HSP12 peptide, so it's instantly dissolving into your wine. You add it before bottling, so you get your blend into your tank, and you say, well, you know, I think it could use a little bit more body or sweetness. That's when you do trials with Autoleaf, and it does.
How soon can you see an impact?
Immediately. It's instantly dissolving, like
in the same day.
Like 30 seconds after you add it.
30 seconds
Yes.
this to our mix.
And-
We test it out.
Absolutely. So you have a bottle of wine on the bench top, you pour 50 mils of wine into a wine glass, you add like 10 to 50 parts per million of this product, mix it in, taste it. It is instant. You taste the difference. It is,
Feels like cheating.
I know, it's awesome. But it's important to know that these things are out there. They can help you.
How soon before bottling are you doing?
All of these products I advocate at least 2 weeks before bottling, but I do have people that will add this the day before they filter. And I've seen it all. And it's kind of like last minute winemaking, which we'll talk a little bit about as well. So this just makes the wine very rich, and it gives that perception of sweetness. Another product that you can add, I'm sure you guys have all heard of gum arabic. We have one that's called Stabavin SP. This is a finishing product as well. And that one really just builds that mid-palate weight as well as gives the wine length. Just kind of fills in those holes that are missing, especially if you have a wine that's super high alcohol and just has a lot of burn. This can help balance that out. And oops, whoa, what happened? All on its own. And then, oh yeah, okay, well, so we'll talk about Manafeel. This is, Manafeel is Laffort's latest product. Leave it to the French for the name. And it's all manoproteins. So it's another product that adds mouthfeel, but it's manoproteins as opposed to polysaccharides. Like the Autoleaf is polysaccharides, Manafeel is manoprotein. And it just adds like volume and amplitude to the mid-palate. It's amazing to taste the difference. So with Autoleaf, you're going to get that perception of sweetness, and Manafeel, it's all volume. So there's lots of tools out there to help amplify a wine. And I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with concentrate, using concentrate, adding RS to kind of balance out high alcohol wines, and wines that have maybe a little bit of a hole in the middle. RS, adding that weight to them can really help as well. And it's a very inexpensive product. So all of these products, you need to think it out ahead of time. Like when you get your blend in tank, and if it's missing something, you should know your timeline. Know when the date is that you're going to bottle and work backwards from there. So if you know that you want to do some bench trials, plan it in your calendar. So then you can determine what you need to do. Then you got to make sure you can get the tannins ordered, or you can just go to the Laffort store over at Brenda Baker's lab and pick them up, or if you have them as a group, and then add them. And so it's trial and error, just get to know it. And if you want to add something, they can add a lot to your wine.